The midday sun was high above Chiang Mai, its warmth spilling across the school courtyard where rows of teakwood benches shaded students escaping the heat. Inside the bustling cafeteria, the air was thick with the mingled scents of fried rice, basil chicken, and green curry. The chatter of hundreds of voices overlapped with the clatter of trays, the scrape of stools, and the occasional burst of laughter. Among the crowd sat Anan, a 16-year-old boy with quick eyes and an easy grin. He was well known not only for his playful jokes but also for the way trouble seemed to follow him like a shadow. His friends gathered around his table, teasing each other while trading bites of sticky rice and fried chicken wings bought from the food counter. "Eat faster, Anan." One of them laughed, watching him carefully balance a spoonful of rice topped with spicy pork. "Before the bell rings, you will still be here." Anan smirked, unconcerned. "The bell can wait. This food cannot." He shoveled the mouthful with exaggerated relish, earning another round of laughter. The cafeteria was alive, a world of its own where the rules of class and study faded away. Boys from the football team shouted over one another. Girls with bright ribbons in their hair traded gossip while sipping iced tea. Teachers sat in the far corner, trying to maintain order with stern looks that rarely lasted more than a few minutes. Yet in that lively atmosphere, something strange was about to happen. Something that would silence the voices and turn all eyes to a single corner of the room. For now, Anan was unaware. He leaned back against the bench, swinging his legs idly as he finished the last of his food. He did not notice the small, flickering red light above the stage in the cafeteria where the microphone stood. Nor did he pay attention to the faint crackle of speakers testing themselves in the corners of the room. Life at lunchtime felt ordinary, safe, and familiar. But in just a few moments, a voice would break that ordinary scene, a voice so sudden and unexpected that it would send ripples of surprise across the entire cafeteria. The kind of moment that students would remember, whisper about, and laugh at for months to come. The clatter of trays and the hum of laughter continued to fill the cafeteria, but a faint crackle echoed from the corners of the room. The speakers, old and dusty from years of announcements, sputtered as if they were waking from a long sleep. A hush fell over a few nearby tables, not out of fear, but from the sudden curiosity that always came before an announcement. Anan hardly noticed. He was busy licking the last trace of chili paste from his spoon. His friends had already begun packing up, stacking trays, and preparing to slip out before the next class. Then it came. The voice was sharp, authoritative, and carried a weight that silenced the cafeteria in an instant. "Is Anan still at lunch?" Every sound stopped. The laughter, the clatter, even the scraping of stools on the floor. Hundreds of eyes turned as one, searching, until they landed on the boy with the spoon still halfway to his mouth. Anan froze. His hand trembled slightly, the spoon suspended in mid-air as though time itself had locked him in place. His friends widened their eyes, their mouths caught between shock and laughter, struggling to keep quiet. The voice from the speakers belonged to Ajaran Somchai, the assistant principal. His reputation was one of stern discipline and quick temper. He rarely wasted words, and when he called a student by name, it usually meant trouble. Whispers broke out across the room. What did he do this time? Maybe he skipped class. Maybe he fought someone. The rumors spread in seconds, like sparks catching dry grass. Anan could feel the weight of every stare pressing on him, pinning him to his seat. His face burned hot, though whether from shame or the heat of the curry, he could no longer tell. At the front of the cafeteria, the microphone crackled again, but no further words came. Only silence. The assistant principal had spoken once, and that was enough to send the entire room into a storm of speculation. Anan lowered his spoon at last, the sound of metal against the tray loud in the stillness. His friends leaned in, whispering urgently, "You had better go. If you stay, it will be worse." But Anan did not move. His heart raced, his mind scrambled to remember what he might have done wrong. Yet nothing came to him. Nothing at all. The room held its breath, waiting to see what he would do. The air in the cafeteria felt heavier with every passing second. Anan's legs tingled as though they no longer belonged to him. His friends were still whispering, their faces pale, urging him to stand. Yet his body resisted, caught between the burning weight of embarrassment and the sharp edge of fear. Finally, with a deep breath, he rose from his seat. The scraping of his stool against the floor cut through the silence like a blade. Every head in the room shifted with him, following his movements as if he were the lead actor in a play he never auditioned for. He tried to keep his head high, to walk steadily towards the door. But the walk across the cafeteria stretched endlessly, every step echoing louder than the last. Students at nearby tables leaned back in their chairs, nudging each other, their eyes wide with curiosity. Why him? What has he done now? Maybe Somchai caught him sneaking out last week. The whispers came like darts, sharp and fast, finding their way into his ears. He clenched his jaw and pressed forward, pretending not to hear. His friends remained at the table, frozen, as though watching a soldier march to the front lines. Ainan's palms were damp with sweat. The food stalls at the side of the cafeteria blurred into shadows. Even the bright posters about school pride seemed to mock him now, their cheerful colors out of place in the sudden seriousness of the moment. At the exit, a teacher stood waiting, arms folded, eyes fixed on him. She said nothing, only tilted her head towards the door as though confirming that yes, the call was meant for him alone. Beyond that door lay the long corridor leading to the administrative office. A corridor most students avoided unless absolutely necessary. Ainan's chest tightened as he stepped through, the door swinging shut behind him. The noise of the cafeteria returned in an instant, a roar of chatter and laughter. Yet he was no longer part of it. His world had shifted. He was alone now, walking the path laid out by that single, startling announcement. And somewhere at the end of that corridor, Ajarn Somchai was waiting. The door closed behind Ainan with a heavy thud, shutting away the noise of the cafeteria. The corridor stretched ahead, long and dim, lined with faded bulletin boards and windows that let in slivers of afternoon light. His footsteps echoed against the tiled floor, each one sounding louder than it should. He glanced at the walls as he walked. There were photographs of past school events, smiling faces frozen in time, banners proclaiming discipline and honor. Yet the silence made those cheerful images feel distant, almost eerie. A faint breeze carried the smell of chalk and old wood from the classrooms nearby. He heard laughter in the distance, the muffled voices of students who were safe within their lessons. None of them knew what he was walking into. Ainan's heart beat faster. He searched his memory again for a reason. Had he forgotten homework? Spoken out of turn in class? Broken some rule without realizing? Nothing seemed serious enough to warrant a public announcement. Halfway down the corridor, he stopped. His legs refused to move. His breath came shallow and uneven. He wanted to turn back, to run into the noise of the cafeteria and pretend none of this had happened. But the thought of Ajarn Somchai waiting at the other end kept him moving. At last, he reached the office door. A small wooden sign above it read administration. The glass panel was clouded, hiding whatever waited inside. His hand hovered over the handle. For a moment, he considered fleeing. But then the door opened by itself, and a voice from within said calmly, "Come in, Ainan." The office smelled faintly of paper, ink, and strong coffee. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with dusty files and thick binders. Behind a wide desk sat Ajarn Somchai, his stern face framed by neatly combed hair and glasses that caught the light. His expression was unreadable. "Sit down," he said. Ainan obeyed, his legs stiff. The chair creaked as he lowered himself into it. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall filled the silence. Somchai leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. His eyes studied Ainan with the precision of a hawk. "You enjoy your lunch, don't you?" The question was unexpected. Ainan blinked, unsure if it was a trick. "Yes, sir." His voice cracked slightly. "You like to take your time," Somchai continued, his tone flat. "So much that sometimes you forget the time for class." Ainan's stomach twisted. So it was about that. The times he had lingered too long, arriving late by a few minutes. It had seemed harmless then. But to be called out in front of the entire school for it felt like a punishment beyond measure. Somchai leaned back in his chair. Do you know why I called your name today? Anan shook his head. To remind not only you but everyone that small habits can grow into large problems. One boy late today, a classroom late tomorrow. Discipline is not just rules. It is respect. The words carried weight. Anan lowered his eyes, ashamed yet also strangely relieved. There was no hidden crime, no secret offense. Just his laziness at lunch. But still, the public nature of the call left a sting. Somchai rose from his chair and paced slowly to the window. His back was straight, his steps measured, like a soldier reviewing his troops. He spoke without turning. I called your name because you are capable of more than you show. You think laughter will protect you. You think charm will excuse you. But those are illusions, Anan. Anan swallowed hard. He wanted to protest, to explain that he never meant disrespect. But the words stuck in his throat. Somchai turned, his gaze sharp. You are not in trouble today. Consider this a warning, one that every ear in that cafeteria has now heard. Tomorrow, you may walk in silence. But they will remember. And you must decide what kind of memory you wish to leave. Anan nodded, his palms pressed together nervously on his lap. Return to class, Somchai said at last. Do not keep me waiting again. The dismissal was clear. Anan stood quickly, bowed, and made his way to the door. His legs still trembled, but the pressure in his chest had eased. He reached for the handle, eager to escape the office. Yet as he pulled it open, he heard Somchai's voice once more, low and steady. The world is watching you now. The corridor felt longer on the way back, though the silence no longer pressed as heavily. Still, the assistant principal's words echoed in his mind. Every step repeated them. The world is watching you now. When Anan returned to the cafeteria, the lunch break had ended. Students were gathering their bags, streaming out towards classrooms. The moment they saw him, whispers rose like a tide. There he is. What did Somchai say? Was he punished? Anan kept his head down, forcing himself not to react. His friends rushed to meet him, their faces filled with both relief and curiosity. Well, one of them asked, what happened? Nothing, Anan said quickly. Just nothing. But his tone betrayed him. The others sensed the weight behind his words. They wanted details, but Anan refused to share. The humiliation of that public call was still too raw. As they walked towards class, the chatter followed him like shadows. It would not fade quickly. Every corner he turned, every face he passed seemed to carry the same question. Is Anan still at lunch? Over the following days, the incident grew larger than Anan had imagined. Students repeated the story, with exaggerations. Some claimed Somchai had shouted at him for minutes. Others whispered that he was nearly suspended. Even teachers raised their eyebrows when he entered class, as though expecting him to misbehave. His name had become a kind of warning, a symbol. Anan tried to ignore it, but the weight pressed on him. The jokes he once told felt empty. The smiles he offered were returned with smirks. He realized that reputation was fragile, and his had been altered in a single moment. One evening at home, he stared at his unfinished homework. His thoughts circled back to Somchai's words. Small habits become large problems. Discipline is respect. For the first time, he felt the truth of those words sink deep. Determined not to be caught again, Anan began arriving early to class. He ate his meals quickly, no longer stretching them into long conversations. His friends teased him, but he smiled faintly and carried on. Teachers noticed the shift. He raised his hand more often, submitted homework on time, and even stayed behind to help tidy the classroom. Slowly, the whispers faded. His name stopped being a punchline and returned to being just a name. Yet deep down, the memory of that afternoon in the cafeteria remained. It was not fear that drove him now, but the desire to prove that Somchai had been right, that he could be more than the boy who lingered too long at lunch. Weeks passed, and life at school returned to its rhythm. The cafeteria was noisy as ever, filled with the same scents and sounds. Students laughed, argued, and shared food as though nothing had changed. But for Anan, the room would never feel the same again. Every time he heard the faint crackle of the speakers, his heart skipped a beat. He would glance up, half expecting his name to be called once more. It never was. Yet that single moment lingered like an echo, shaping the way he walked, studied, and lived. The call of his name had been brief, but its shadows stretched long. And though the world had moved on, Anan carried the memory quietly, a reminder etched into the heart of his youth.